sacrificing sleep. And we know the fountain of youth is nutrition and rest.
One consequence of this, Rabel says, is they're likely to have shorter pro lacrosse careers as a result. They're stretched too thin. That's why what Rabel wants is for the money in pro lacrosse to be good enough that these athletes can play without having to moonlight.
And as attention and revenue continues to grow for the league, so will total game allotment, what we call tonnage, which means more games, greater wages.
Bloomberg's Bailey Lifschultz says that expanding the pool of potential players will be critical to its future success.
The interesting question is, if you go from the current 8-team format and hypothetically make it 10, 12, 14, then you're kind of stretching that pool of guys who can play full-time lacrosse.
Growing the number of teams means more games and potentially more advertising dollars, as well as more exposure, which can help create star lacrosse players and enthusiasm for the sport.
And one of the interesting things from the league's perspective in trying to get more guys to go full-time is that they want to lean into marketing. So they want these guys to be, if they're interested, social media marketers.
It's a lot of threads that will need to come together to make lacrosse into the multi-billion-dollar business Rabel is imagining. But if it does work, it could be, potentially, a roadmap for other sports, some more athletic than others. I'm interested in sort of what's making this possible culturally. So we're seeing in the U.S. kind of the death of monocultures. You can seek out what you're interested in. You no longer have to watch the thing that's on TV. And I wonder if you've thought about how that's fueling, yes, interest in professional lacrosse, but also just kind of a wider variety of sports and the possibility there could be more professional sports leagues.
When you look at what sports leagues like the Cornhole League have done, when you look at the viewership related to darts, it takes you back to the early days at ESPN where they were showing completely random sports.
Just fill time.
They had to fill time with sports. And if you're a 24/7 sports network, you need content. When you look at, to your point, the fact that people are leaning more into some of these niche opportunities, it draws greater advertising dollars. You can better target your viewers if you know who's going to watch Cornhole on a Saturday afternoon.
This is The Big Take from Bloomberg News. I'm David Gura. This episode was produced by Jessica Beck and Alex Segura. It was edited by Stacey Vanek Smith and Eric Johnson. It was mixed by Veronica Rodriguez. Fact-checked by Thomas Liu. Our senior producers are Naomi Shavin and Kim Gittleson. Our senior editor is Elizabeth Ponso. Nicole Beamsterboer is our executive producer. Sage Bauman is our head of podcast. Thanks for listening.
World markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
Millions of Americans are expected to travel this 4th of July holiday weekend. AAA predicts nearly 71 million people will travel 50 miles or more during the holiday travel period. Over 60 million people are expected to travel by car, nearly 3 million more than last year. And airports could see a record-breaking number of travelers as well, with around 5.75 million people predicted to fly. AAA says this is the first year the travel period was extended to include 2 weekends. President Biden is responding to critics of his performance.
The fact of the matter is that, I screwed up. I made a mistake. That's 90 minutes on stage. Look at what I've done in 3.5 years.
In a radio interview, the host, Earl Ingram, said he didn't get the impression that Biden is ready to throw in the towel and give up the Democratic nomination. I'm Lisa Carton.
And from the Bloomberg Newsroom, I'm Scott Carr. U.S. markets are closed for the 4th of July holiday. Overseas, the FTSE in London is higher by 0.7%. The CAC in Paris is up 0.8%. The DAX in Germany is up 0.4%. The Nikkei in Japan closed higher by 0.8% in Thursday trading. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong gained just under 0.3%. China's CSI 300 closed lower by 0.5%. Here in the U.S., Wednesday was another day of records for the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet tells us investors were noting fresh data this week that point to further reasons for the Fed to lower interest rates this year.
In a holiday shortened session, the S&P 500 index NASDAQ Composite and NASDAQ 100 Index all climbed to records on bets lower rates will keep fueling corporate America. Investors were also keeping an eye on political developments, with Joe Biden struggling to contain pressures to abandon his re-election bid. The S&P 500 topped 5535, notching its 33rd record of 2024. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
Forecasters expect a monthly report on U.S. employment due out tomorrow to show a step down in hiring in June, along with a moderation in wage growth. A Bloomberg survey indicates payrolls probably rose by 190,000 last month, and that average hourly earnings likely increased by 3.9% from the year earlier, the least in 3 years. The unemployment rate is seen holding at 4%, the highest level in more than 2 years. The report is set to be published Friday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Evidence is mounting that the U.S. labor market is slowing. The government says the number of workers collecting unemployment pay is the highest in more than 2 years. New claims for unemployment pay are also higher. In the meantime, payroll processor ADP reported Wednesday that American businesses hired the fewest workers since the start of the year in June. While industry data pointed to a slump in America's services sector, the ISM Services Index registered the worst showing in 4 years in June. There's been a sharp pullback in business activity, and orders also fell last month. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Scott Carr, and this is Bloomberg.
Tomorrow, we zero in on June jobs.
Are we in a boom labor economy?
The unemployment rate 4%.
What do the numbers mean for the Fed's July meeting?
Is this enough of an positive jobs report?
It's been a solid, resilient job market.
The June jobs report on Bloomberg Surveillance.
There's no real indication here of the labor market cracking.
Tomorrow morning at 8:30. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. And always on Bloomberg 1130. Context changes everything.
Find what you love what you find. Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. All kinds of beers and thousands of wines. Guys in the know and prices so low. It just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
Only at Total Wine and More. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
Welcome to Staples, young man.
Tomorrow's my big day.
Big day?
First grade.
Aw, well, Staples has crayons, markers, glue.
I need a laptop.
Oh, yeah, sure. With Staples Hot Deals, you can save up to $300 on select PCs for school.
Wait. The finances are Mom's department.
Right.
I'm looking for performance, like a Core i7 processor.
Boy, first grade has really changed.
Tell me about it.
Save big on tech for school with super low Staples Hot Deals. Right now, get up to $300 off select PCs at Staples. Ends 8/24.
Join us in Atlanta or via live stream on August 22nd for Bloomberg's Business Value of AI event and networking reception. This event will gather business and technology executives to share their experiences and provide insights into their strategies for deploying AI that achieves a desirable ROI. You'll also learn how companies have successfully implemented AI solutions that have improved productivity and profitability. This program is proudly sponsored by IBM. Register at bloomberglive.com/AI/radio.
Give the star in your life the brightest gift in the world. Name a star after them. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can name a star for birthdays, weddings, or even memorials. Over 45 years, we have named millions of stars for celebrities and individuals from around the world. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
Celebrate July 4th with the hottest deal in the world. Right now, get 2.5 quart red, white, and blue annuals for $10. And buy two, get one free on select paint and exterior stain via Lowe's gift card rebate. Shop these deals before they're gone, because Lowe's knows summer savings. $7.10. Annuals offer in-store only. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Actual plant size and selection varies by location. Paint. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowe's.com/rebates for details. While supplies last.
Now your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Makes clouds and sun with a risk of a shower, thunderstorm popping up in spots. High temperature 85 to near 90. Tonight, few showers into a thunderstorm. Low to mid-70s. Tomorrow, partly sunny. Risk of afternoon showers and storms again. 85 to 90. A few more showers on Saturday, 80s. And 90 on Sunday. Sun and clouds expected. This is Gary Best with your weekend weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
The business world's most prominent voices join David Weston for Bloomberg Wall Street Week.
This week, Bloomberg's Stephanie Flanders on UK election results and U.S. jobs numbers, Lazard's Ken Jacobs on the Supreme Court's remaking of business regulation, and Peter Georgescu on American capitalism through the eyes of a young boy fleeing communist Romania in the 1950s.
Bloomberg Wall Street Week, Friday night at 6 on Bloomberg 1130. Or on demand wherever you get your podcasts. Bloomberg Radio. Context changes everything.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Well, next time you go to the bank, you might think you took a wrong turn and wound up in Starbucks instead. Because banks are gut remodeling as they bank on getting you comfortable.
The banks are taking cues from the coffee shops, from the hotel lobbies.
Kai Olson, Interior Design Director at design firm HOK.
The places where people feel are enjoyable outside of the workplace or their home.
Olson says as we do more of our transactional banking, like making deposits online, banks are trying to lure us in to sell us other services instead.
Draw people in to provide more advisory services.
Services like mortgage loans and financial planning, things we're more likely to accept in a friendly lounge or cafe-like environment.
I think that these spaces are starting to drive that engagement that they're looking for.
And Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, among those giving their branches makeovers. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Radio.
Now, a sports update on Bloomberg 1130.
Mets in the Nationals still scoreless in Washington in the seventh inning. Mets just one hit off starter Jake Irvin. Yankees looking to avoid a sweep. They play the Reds in the Bronx. Marcus Stroman down the hill for the Yankees. Frankie Montas for the Reds. Miggy Suno becomes a 10-time women's Nathan's hot dog eating champion, downing a record 51 hot dogs. The men's competition getting underway. No Joey Chestnut, the 16-time champion. That's your Bloomberg Sports Report. I'm Dan Schwartzman.
Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Podcast Spotlight Hour on Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Big Take DC podcast from Bloomberg News. I'm Saleha Mosin. Today we're talking about why housing has become so unaffordable in the U.S. About 8 years ago, Andrew O'Neill achieved the American ideal that so many strive for. He and his wife bought their first home, a condo in Washington, D.C.
They handed us the keys and we were like, what did we just do? Was that a good idea or not?
He says they used a first-time buyer grant program to help with the down payment. Their monthly costs were about the same as their monthly rent had been. A few years later, they sold that condo and upgraded to a townhouse.
And because real estate was going up so fast, we did make a good profit on our condo after only a couple years.
But in 2021, Andrew and his family had to relocate to Westchester County, just outside of New York City, for work. Selling the townhouse was no problem. They got an offer that was $75,000 over their asking price before it even hit the market. Their plan was to rent for a year while they got to know the area, and then reinvest their profits into a new house in Westchester.
Our mortgage in D.C. was $2,600. I thought our mortgage would certainly be more, but I was thinking more would be like $35,000, $38,000, $4,000.
What they did not account for was a major sea change in the housing market. Within that year they planned to spend renting, the Federal Reserve started increasing interest rates. In January of 2021, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate was 2.65%. 2 years later, it had more than doubled.
Just watching the interest rates go, I was looking and I was like, oh, houses that are okay, like subpar houses, would be $6,000. And that blows our entire budget.
It's an election year, and the economy is the top issue for voters. Vulnerabilities in the housing market will be guiding Americans as they choose a president. And for a growing number of them, like Andrew and his wife, home ownership might not make sense anymore. For now, they've gone back to renting, and they're navigating a tumultuous market that has everybody feeling the squeeze. Today on the show, we look at why housing in America is so expensive and how frustrations over rent and mortgages are shaping the 2024 presidential race. I speak with Sean Donovan, who was Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the Obama administration.
I've never seen the affordability crisis this bad.
And with a real estate economist who's been looking at all the numbers. From Bloomberg's Washington Bureau, this is the Big Tape CC podcast. I'm Philea Mosin. 30 years ago, the median U.S. household income was about $32,000. Census Bureau data also shows that the median home cost was $130,000. So in 1994, Americans typically spent about 4 times their household income buying a home. According to the latest census data, in 2022, it was up to 6 times.
The main problem with the current housing market is a lack of homes for sale, and that lack of homes has made home values higher.
Daryl Fairweather is the chief economist at Redfin, a real estate brokerage that collects data on the housing market. I asked her how we got here. She says that we need to look back at the 2008 financial crisis.
The 2008 recession started in the housing market. The housing market had a bubble, and then the Federal Reserve started to raise interest rates, which popped that bubble, and everybody who thought that home values were only going to rise ended up in a hard situation. After the Great Recession, we stopped prioritizing building housing. People were kind of scared off of that industry.
The housing supply was low 10 years later, right around when COVID hit. To keep the economy afloat during the pandemic, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates to make borrowing money cheaper. That meant mortgage rates dropped.
And then that turned into a frenzy where people were really eager to take advantage of low rates. People were moving because of life changes, like remote work, allowing them to live in new parts of the country, or people reevaluating what they wanted out of a home because of the pandemic.
Think of all the people who moved out of major cities when they realized they didn't have to commute into an office every day. They could live near family or get space with a backyard. And they could get a sweet deal on a mortgage.
So there was all of this demand, and then that caused prices to go up. But then, because of all that frenzy, not just in the housing market, but in the economy more broadly, the Fed had to raise interest rates.
The Fed raised interest rates to try and tackle inflation. That meant all the demand for housing, which drove up home prices, was now coupled with high borrowing costs.
High in mortgage rates. Mortgage rates were around 7% for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, whereas back in 2021, mortgage rates were at around 3%.
That can add thousands of dollars to someone's monthly mortgage payments.
So it lowers the budgets for home buyers and actually kicks some home buyers out of the market altogether if they can't find anything that meets their needs, that also meets their budget.
This year, we saw the rate of cash buyers reach the highest level in the last decade. Those are the home buyers who can pay the full price outright. Borrowing costs have made it really hard for people who need to take out mortgages to afford a home. When the Fed's rates went up,
housing market abruptly started to slow down. So 2023 was the fewest home sales on record, at least as far as back as we measure things, to 2012.
That means more and more people are turning to renting instead. People like Andrew O'Neill and his family. But the rental market is under strain too.
An 18% jump in rents year over year during COVID is something we've never seen before in the history of keeping track.
That's Sean Donovan, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, under President Obama. He served during the height of the housing crisis in the aftermath of the 2008 financial meltdown. And now he sees what he calls an affordability crisis. Today, he works for Enterprise Community Partners, a nonprofit organization that focuses primarily on improving access to housing through the rental market. He said high rents are a big hurdle for people hoping to buy.
Traditionally, the pathway, the ladder, looks like you rent for a while, you are able to save enough money every month to put together that down payment. As rents have increased, that savings is just harder and harder for folks to achieve.
There's a reason that homeowners